Good afternoon and welcome to the IFFD Briefing 2024, Young Families and Climate Anxiety Overcome the Climate Baby Dilemma to Better Achieve the 2020 Agenda. We are excited to have this event and kick off the celebrations of the 30th anniversary of the International Year of the Family during this Commission on Social Development. I'll give the floor to Nora Urrea, Board Vice President of IFFD, to deliver some opening remarks.
Distinguished delegates, participants, esteemed guests, on behalf of the International Federation for Family Development, I am honored to address you today at this side event on young families and climate anxiety. I would like to start by acknowledging the sponsorship and collaboration of the Division on Inclusive Social Development of the United Nations Department of Social Development, as well as the collaboration and presence of two IFFD awardees, the Government of Kenya and the Doha International Family Institute. As we commemorate the 30th anniversary of the International Year of the Family, it is crucial to recognize the unique challenges faced by young families amid climate change. IFFD has been at the forefront of initiatives to support and empower young families, and we have taken significant steps to prepare for this milestone anniversary. Today, we close a cycle reviewing the megatrends suggested by the United Nations Secretary General. We present our activities to better prepare the anniversary, including the climate change-related outcome of the European Youth Statement and the Civil Society Declaration for the 30th anniversary of the International Year of the Family, both underscoring the importance of resilience building and sustainable solutions. Number one, promoting resilience within young families. IFFD has been promoting resilience within young families by providing them with the necessary tools, resources, and support systems. Through our various programs and initiatives, we have focused on strengthening family bonds, enhancing communication skills, and fostering adaptive coping mechanisms. By equipping young families with resilience-building strategies, we aim to empower them to navigate the challenges posed by climate change and foster a sense of hope and stability. Number two, climate change education and awareness. IFFD recognizes the importance of climate change education and awareness in empowering young families to take action. We are developing comprehensive educational materials, workshops, and training programs to highlight the impact of climate change on families and provide practical solutions for sustainable living. By raising awareness and promoting environmental consciousness, we empower young families to make informed decisions and contribute to mitigating the impacts of climate change. Number three, strengthening support networks. IFFD understands the vital role of support networks in helping young families cope with climate anxiety. We have a global network of family support centers, online platforms, and community-based initiatives that provide a safe space for young families to share experiences, to seek guidance, and to access resources. By fostering supportive environments, we enhance the well-being of young families and promote social cohesion in the face of climate challenges. Number four, advocacy and policy engagement. IFFD actively engages in advocacy and policy dialogue to ensure the voices and concerns of young families are heard at the international level. We have collaborated with governments, NGOs, and other stakeholders to advocate for policies that prioritize the well-being and resilience of young families in the context of climate change. By amplifying their voices, we strive to create an enabling environment that supports young families and addresses their unique needs, especially in family formation and parenting support. Number five, Civil Society Declaration for the 30th anniversary. As part of our preparations for the 30th anniversary of the International Year of the Family, IFFD has led together with other transnational partners a civil society declaration that highlights the importance of the family and social development, including climate change policy recommendations. This declaration, endorsed by numerous civil society organizations, emphasizes the need for comprehensive support systems, climate change education, mental health services, and inclusive policy frameworks. It calls for collective action to address the challenges faced by young families and promotes sustainable solutions for a resilient future. In conclusion, the International Federation for Family Development is committed to supporting young families and addressing climate change anxiety. Through our advocacy efforts, we strive to empower young families, strengthen their resilience, and promote sustainable development. As we celebrate this milestone, let us work together to create a world where young families thrive, climate anxiety is alleviated, and sustainable development is achieved. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Urrea. Now allow me to turn to Honorable Florence Bohr, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Labor and Social Protection of the Republic of Kenya. Your Excellency, you have the floor for opening remarks.
Thank you, Moderator. Chair, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, on behalf of the Republic of Kenya, I'm honored to be part of this event. In the year 2020, Kenya was a recipient of the IFFD Award for developing the then draft National Family Promotion and Protection Policy and aligning it with the 2030 Agenda for the Sustainable Development. I'm pleased to inform you that the family policy was enacted in October 2023 and its implementation is ongoing. Specifically, Kenya has taken the following policy interventions to support families. One, the National Positive Parenting Program, where parents and caregivers are taken through a 15-week training to enhance their skills on positive parenting, specifically their parenting knowledge, attitude, behavior, and practice for holistic child development, family promotion, and protection. Two, the other intervention is the National Care Reform Strategy for Children in Kenya, which reaffirms the significance and the leading role of the family in the care, nurturing, growth, and development of children. Three, the other intervention is that Kenya is implementing cash transfer programs and cash plus initiatives that provide a safety net for vulnerable families, ensuring that they have access to essential services. The cash transfer program currently has a coverage of 1.3 million beneficiaries. Four, the Affordable Housing Program is another intervention that targets the low-income and middle-income families to enable them to acquire a decent, accessible, and affordable housing. And lastly, but not least, is affirmative action programs for financial inclusion that provide access to credit to youth, women, and persons with disabilities for socio-economic empowerment. Distinguished delegates, in conclusion, Kenya will remain steadfast in its commitment to uplift families and empower the youth to ensure that they are fully respected and valued as active members of the society. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Moving on to the interactive discussion, I would like to introduce our youth representatives. Miguel Garcia Nates, Álvaro Herrero Tejedor, Crocio Ramos Garcia Nates. You have the floor.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with all of you today. Firstly, I would like to thank briefly my university, University of Navarra, for sponsoring this opportunity. In recent months, 8 students, groups from various European universities across 6 countries, investigated the impact of climate anxiety on family planning as part of their contribution to the 30th anniversary preparations for the International Year of the Family. Drawing on a comprehensive study in The Lancet, which disclosed that 40% of Gen Z individuals globally hesitate to have children due to climate concerns. The groups met in Brussels on January 31st. There, they discussed their findings, formulated recommendations, and presented them in the European Parliament, engaging with representatives from the European Committee of the Regions, the European Economic and Social Committee, and field experts. As members of one of the groups, we have been designated to convey the outcomes. We want to underline that young people's commitment to the environment extends beyond civic and political participation. It is intertwined with their concept of transitions. By challenging the current growth model and its environmental impact, young people question the economy's centrality in defining adulthood. Thank you very much.
The 2023 Eurobarometer survey underscores that the 77% of Europeans consider climate change a highly serious problem, indicating a prevalence of eco-anxiety, as recognized by the American Psychology Association, with the consequent effects on mental health and resilience. This leads us to ponder the ethical, the environmental, livelihood, and political considerations underlying concerns about climate change and reproductive decision-making. Addressing climate change involves transforming our practices to build a sustainable future. But imposing a draconian one-child limit policy in a country like France, as demonstrated by Emmanuel Pont in his Brussels presentations, would yield only marginal emissions reductions, similar to shutting down all coal-fired power stations. Additionally, research from the University of Leeds indicates that an individual living alone produces a comparable or even higher carbon footprint than a household of at least 4 people. To have a generation to save the planet for, we need to empower our society. We don't need to paralyze it. Moreover, while humanity poses a significant threat to itself, an antinatalist narrative discouraging childbirth to protect the environment is discriminatory, especially considering higher birth rates in the global south, while the majority of global warming is attributed to the actions of the global north.
Addressing declining birth rates requires a nuanced understanding of various factors, including climate change anxiety and shifts towards individualism in society. There is no one-size-fits-all solution, and potential secondary effects of simplistic approaches must be considered. Economic challenges and climate anxiety undermine the family's role in social development. Restoring confidence in ourselves and our roots is crucial to overcoming fear and approaching the future with realism and courage. We advocate for effective policies focusing on promoting family values, countering information overload, and fostering a commitment to building a future through family life. Practical measures, such as policies with economic incentives, equal job opportunities, and recognizing motherhood as a full-time job, can boost youth confidence in investing in a family. Political entities should prioritize awareness campaigns for genuine, sustainable living instead of endorsing unnecessary protection. Governments should develop plans at all levels, fostering critical thinking, reframing narratives, addressing negative psychological impacts, creating supportive environments for parents, and providing economic compensations for families reducing their consumption. Thank you very much.
Thank you for conveying your message. Allow me now to proceed with the interactive discussion. First of all, allow me to appreciate the presence of our speakers today during this commission and Year of Family. For this section, I'll briefly introduce all the speakers now so we can have a fluid conversation later. They all have contributed with papers or recommendations on specific megatrends for the preparations of the 30th anniversary of the International Year of the Family. Bahira Trask, professor from the Department of Human Development and Family Sciences at the University of Delaware. She has contributed with the paper on migration, urbanization, and the family dimension. Susan K. Walker, associate professor of family social science at the University of Minnesota, wrote Technology Use and Families, Implications for Work-Family Balance and Parents' Education. Zita Mokomani, Associate Professor in Demography, Health and Society, University of Pretoria, South Africa. She contributed with the impact of demographic change on families. In this interactive discussion, I'll ask 3 questions to the invited speakers. The objective is to be able to convey policy recommendations to member states on family-responsive legislation, looking forward to the reports and resolutions on the family. So let us start with the first question. In less than 2 minutes, can you mention key interlinkages from the topic of your paper for the International Year and the megatrend on climate change? Professor Walker, may we start with you?
I'd like to pass and take a moment to
Okay. Okay, that's fine, no problem. So let's move on for the question 2. In less than 2 minutes, please share recommendations for young families and policymakers to better comprehend and address climate change. Professor Mokomani, would you mind?
Last one.
Okay, it's share recommendations for young families and policymakers to better comprehend and address climate change.
Okay, thank you very much for the question and for the invitation to be part of this conversation. I speak from an African perspective because that's where I work, that's where I come from. And I find it's very interesting. I was just looking at listening to your findings, and I'll read the Lancet thing. I know I have 2 minutes, but I wanted to just say that from the African perspective, I don't think there's a very clear linkage between climate change and the demographic trends that I was talking about. Probably more direct when we talk about migration, but things like fertility and mortality, less so. But in terms of advice regarding young families and policymakers, I'll start with policymakers. Like I said in the panel, that I think education and awareness raising is one of the critical factors. And so this, when we do more research, invest in research to see the linkages between climate change and all the other demographic trends, then we can mainstream that into education policies and awareness and knowledge. And then young people, we start from the beginning from the young ages to make sure that they all are aware. I travel around the world and I saw that there's probably more awareness in the global north than in the global south and in Africa where I come from. So picking from my perspective, I think more awareness and education in that for policymakers, and it will eventually trickle down to young families. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to the last question before Professor Walker have her time to respond. That's okay. So may you convey insightful advice regarding young families and climate anxiety? So Professor Trask, let's start with you this time.
Thank you very much, Letizia, and thank you to the youth delegates. This was a very interesting presentation. I think the piece we haven't really talked about is the role of corporations in all of this. We're spending a lot of time talking about individuals, we're talking about governments, but corporations are also a very important player because they make deals with governments so that they loosen the regulations around production and, traffic and pollution and everything else, and that then causes climate change. So I think, they are an important player in this. That said, I said this in the last presentation, and I want to say this again. The world has many times faced terrible crises, and young people have been shocked and frightened by this and thought, how can I bring a child into this world that is facing this disease or this terrible war or a nuclear threat? But the human race goes on. Yeah, we are driven. I teach a class, big class. I say we're driven to reproduce. Yeah, this is an instinct in us. So I am not sure that we are going to stop reproducing. Even though at lunch I was telling them I was reading about a group. There's a new global group that has formed that is trying to not to. You've read about this group, yeah? They don't want people to have children. They're trying to encourage us. I don't think they will be successful personally. So. That said, I very much agree with my colleague that prevention is the key, prevention and also information. I think even in the global north and in high-income countries, there are groups of people who are busy with this, but this is not uniform across, I live in the United States. A lot of people are not talking about climate change. The people who are talking about climate change tend to be, not only, but tend to be educated. They tend to be middle class, upper middle class, not the rich. Yeah, the rich are flying in private airplanes that have an incredible carbon. Not all, of course, but you know what I'm trying to say. So it's specific groups of people that are busy with this topic. So I think information is very, very important. And I also want to say I'm dating myself with this, but I grew up in the 1970s, and there was a big environmental movement then. I remember going home, telling my mother we shouldn't do this and we shouldn't do that because we want to save the environment. You remember this also, yeah? And it actually, unfortunately, didn't go very far because we are, again, dealing with these issues now at an escalated point. So, thank you.
Okay. My apologies for the misunderstanding, but all the professors are invited to respond to the 3 questions. So I don't know if Professor Mokomani or Professor Walker would like to add something. No, okay. So the question for Professor Mokomani was to share recommendations for young families and policymakers to better comprehend and address climate change. So Professor Trask and Professor Walker, would you like to add something to the Professor Mokomani speech?
I would say education. And that starts with the family. So certainly it's part of IFFD's central mission, but the conversations about climate change can be within families, but I don't think that's going to happen until we're having greater conversations in the communities that families are intersecting with. And so in my noting of the policy pieces, I think that climate change, like digital technologies, needs to be integrated in any of our educational efforts with families, and not necessarily as a topic that we talk about today and we don't address it again, but has it being infiltrated through all of our conversations, because I think if we can raise the awareness within the family, then we'll have more conversations also within the family.
Thank you very much. So the first question was, can you mention key interlinkages from the topic of your paper for the International Year and the megatrend on climate change? So we can start with Professor Walker, and then if Professor Trask or Professor Mokomani would like something, feel free to do that.
Great. So the paper that I prepared for the UN a couple years ago was on the impact of digital technologies and work-family balance and on parenting education. So I'll speak to both of those. I think from the standpoint of work-family balance, we just don't know. I think when it comes to climate change, we're looking at reducing the carbon footprint. About the closest we have now to looking at work and family balance is working from home and what that might mean to reduce transportation and, helping reduce carbon levels. But it's at a very, very early stage. I think what is also needed besides just the research, just to see how much this is a trend, and because even as companies are calling people, quote unquote, back to work, there still is about 1 out of every 5 days people are working from home. And so it's going to be kind of a moving target for research. And when that research is done, it needs to, again, be very extensive and not just in the Northern European and Northern American countries. And in terms of parenting education, again, as I just mentioned, it does need to be a topic. Climate change needs to be a topic that is introduced in parenting education, and parenting education needs to start early, and not just with parents of adolescents, but starting early and as being a topic that especially the folks who are working with parents feel comfortable talking about. So it can't just be, today we're going to talk about climate change, but the facilitators of those conversations need to feel comfortable. They need to know what to say, how to start those conversations. Just like with technology, I think it needs to be much more discussion focused, so that everybody can hear everybody, and that's where I believe parents are really listening and really learning from each other. And so I would ask that within the field of parenting education that we do integrate climate change as a topic, in part by preparing the professionals and the paraprofessionals and practitioners who facilitate parenting education, so that they feel the most comfortable in engaging in those conversations.
Thank you, Professor Trask and Professor Mokomani. Would you like to add something?
Important piece in this also is that the whole climate crisis has been politicized, and you either believe in climate change or you don't, and this is very problematic because you have a lot of people who don't want to include it in education because of the political aspects. In my opinion, the best way to get over politics is to show facts. Yeah, facts are as much as numbers can be facts, but you know what I mean, show empirical research and their effects. So, for example, much of the climate change is really being felt in the poorest parts of the world, and particularly in large cities that are on coastal areas, in flood zones, that sort of thing. And I mean, even though this is not a poor area, look at what happened in Los Angeles just last week. It is those kind of events that actually raise awareness. Or last spring, there were the wildfires in Canada that came down the East Coast. And for the first time, I heard people who they have no interest to discuss climate change. All of a sudden, they were saying, I can't go outside and breathe. My asthma is bad. So these events will eventually trigger even the quote-unquote non-believers to get involved. But I think the first thing is to unpoliticize the issue, because we're not going to make any progress as long as it's a political issue. So,
can I just do a quick follow-up?
Yeah.
In agreement with that, I would say part of that preparation of facilitators who work with families is depoliticizing it. So because I've worked with practitioners who feel very comfortable expressing their personal opinions. And because they're so trusted with families, it then feels like fact. And so in our preparation, the more evidence base that we have around climate change, we can prepare these professionals. They can facilitate dialogue, I think. I did want to comment too, someone had asked a question in the earlier session about policymakers listening to families. Can I respond to that? Yeah, good. You know, it was pretty depressing to me a few years back. I was at a conference that was on research practice and policy, and policymakers, legislative aides, and whatnot were there, and they held up a pie chart, and there was a very narrow little piece of the pie, and they said these are the different influences on our setting policy, and that little tiny sliver was research. And so those of us from academia are led to believe that all the work we do is so important and it's going to inform policy, when really there are so many other factors. And unfortunately, a lot of that is money, and it's politics, and it's what is going to drive the economy. And so I would just say, for families to hear their voices is, again, bolstering advocacy, letting families know that they do have a voice, and that families can vote with their pocketbook, with their Venmo, and by having a voice with their individual legislators, and then the family agencies like IFFD and others who work for family issues, because they have a seat at the table, are representing the voices of families. But just know what we're up against and be realistic about it.
Thank you very much. We now would like to open the floor to questions from the audience. Remember to introduce yourself and your affiliation. You have 1 minute for your question. I don't know, just a minute. Anyone would like to ask questions? Yeah, please.
Sure, and I would like to thank, I think, IFFD organizers of this event. I think it's very important to voicing out the young people in the panelist discussions. And my question is related to this concept of climate anxiety. And I would like to draw an attention about a recent incident that happened by whom they labeled themselves as environmentalists, or like environmental activists, whom you know that there was a campaign called Food Response, where they damaged the Mona Lisa in Paris recently. So I think, you know, from the experts that we have, Zita, Bahia, Susan, how do you see this kind of violent actions in relation to, you know, climate and anxiety? From, you know, I'm not a psychologist, but I can see from like very human rights even based approach that in order to show a message, the message behind this was to draw attention about the unsustainable food production, but I believe that you know, drawing such messages, and this is a frequent you know, kind of pattern by the activists in terms of the environment. I think the patterns and expressing these issues in a violent way is really questioning the ethical approach behind the climate change. So if you can have some insights on this. Thank you.
That coming from a country with a history of violence, I really don't think violence can solve much. And I want to go back to the point I raised earlier, that I think more of education and awareness of really probably more advocacy than violence to say what the climate change is doing, so that people take it and really institutionalize it or mainstream it. As you're talking, I was thinking of examples. I have young children, but who would say that they won't buy clothes from some of international producers because the way they use cheap labor and exploit women and things. And you can see the awareness among young people to say, I like this, but I'm not going to buy it. And I think the same thing, if you understand what this does for climate change, you might say, I can't do this because this is the reason. So I agree with you really that it's more awareness, like I said earlier, advocacy than violence that can help us. Thank you.
Also about the violence piece, but it comes, I think, also out of frustration, you know, that we've been, like I said, we've been having this discussion since the 1970s, yeah? This is not a new topic. The only reason that it's now, you know, there've been the warnings and the warnings and the warnings, and now all of a sudden it is starting to really accelerate, yeah? We're seeing more climate events, more people are affected, and the question is what is being done. One way, in my mind, is when there are good practices, they need to be advertised, yeah? People need to know about them. They need to know that, okay, we're having these problems, but there are companies that are doing things. There are governments that are, you know, again, we don't, you know, if you were to ask me right now, what is the most sustainable company out there, I wouldn't be able to answer that question, yeah? And I read a lot, and I'm very interested, but I don't know. So we need more of that kind of also positive messaging and positive information, because there are a lot of people who care, and there are governments that care, and there are businesses that care. But this is not it needs to be a consolidated effort, and that's not right now. It's very piecemeal, and the information is very piecemeal.
So I love it when the previous speaker gives me a platform that I can just build on. I honestly can't speak to the direct correlation with or connection with climate change, but what I can reflect on, again, when I think about the use of technology, one of the differences from our movements in the 1970s to now is the use of ICT in organizing events and organizing violent demonstrations. And so the speed and the ease at which protesters can gather, can fuel each other's information and emotions online is unbelievable. I mean, it's like we've never experienced before. And so I think that needs to be, if any of the efforts or interests in terms of what are we going to do about violence, we have to understand the role that ICT is playing in organizing the events. I think also in terms of, and this is, as Bahira was saying, the social media influence in perpetrating and spreading that influence of emotion. And we've seen it now in political divisions, where we didn't before, because people weren't as dependent on social media, on Instagram, on X, for their news, for their information. But they are now, and so their opinions can become very much more biased and less informed because they're part of this social network. So they're part of their tribe, they're part of their group that believes a particular thing. So I don't think we can minimize the impact that social media is having. And then the final thing is, again, media messaging. So what is the media presenting about climate change? And we need to hold them responsible, because there's definitely more complexity. There's more color to it. But like anything else, the media is an industry that needs to make money. And so they're going to, when it bleeds, it leads, right? And so that's what they're going to be producing. So I think in all of this, as we're aware of what ICT can do in terms of fueling this, and also the algorithms that are used to keep certain messages in front of our faces that just incite people's opinions, we also are looking at the media industry and the messaging that they're choosing to use that is going to contribute to violence.
Thank you very much, professors. Because we are running out of time, we just have time for one more question. So you raised your hand first. I'm sorry. We can keep discussing after the panel. Please I kindly ask you to keep your question in 1 minute. Thank you.
Young families and climate anxiety, what are the proposals out there or solutions out there regarding agriculture, second income and climate change, hydroponics, apiculture, where families can actually feed themselves while addressing climate change? Pardon? Oh, I'm Dr. Rebecca Finlayson Harper. I'm from the Family Civility Institute.
Would you like to go first? No. Okay.
Thought as Susan was talking and with the question. I think, for example, this just came to me, is giving people a smorgasbord of choices about how they can individually make an impact would be very helpful. Because, for example, fast fashion, yeah, a lot of people are not aware. When I was growing up, there was no such thing as fast fashion. You bought something and you wore it several years, or a long time also, or you made it yourself. Yeah, now people, I see this, they buy something, they wear it one time for an Instagram picture, and then it's thrown away, and then it goes to poor parts of the world, and it gets used in very strange and dangerous ways also. A lot of people don't know any of this. They just go and they buy something over the internet and they think it's cute, finished, you know. So again, we're back to educating people about their choices.
Oh, thank you very much, Professor Tresk. I'll finish this section with the organizations that have shown and transmitted interest in delivering statements. So first, Ms. Sonia Bruck, Vice Chair of the Board of ICOS Children Villages Brazil.
Thank you for the invitation. I want to start by thanking IFFD for the invitation and space to share just a brief reflection and an example of some good practice that help reverse the effects of climate change, not only on the planet, but on the physical and mental well-being of inhabitants, especially children. I think, I come from Brazil, and Brazil, we are really being affected by climate change. And I think this is a subject that not just people from medium class are talking about. No, because poor people in Brazil is really being affected for climate change. I mean, this is just something that is not written, but I just would like to say. As many of you know in this room, SOS Children's Village works with families that find themselves in vulnerable situations due to economic, social, and increasingly climate change factors. I want to add a few words to the great presentations today about one of the worst consequences of climate change for children, the loss of care due to family separation. When parents feel the impact of extreme climate events, sometimes can't cope with their family responsibilities, and families collapse with the worst burden of the separation being felt by the child. I really love, Professor, your presentation. Yes, I think this is really true, what you said. While they are the least responsible for climate change, children and adolescents bear the greatest burden of its impacts because they are at a more sensitive stage of development. In addition, services, policies, and institutions that meet their needs and those of their families are jeopardized by the climate crisis. And within children, the effects of the crisis disproportionately affect those living in situations of greater vulnerability, already deprived of other rights, mainly Black, Indigenous, Quilombolas, and belonging to other traditional people and communities. Migrants and or refugees, children and adolescents with disabilities, etc. Despite this, the majority of public policies and national plans relating to climate and environment make little mention of or completely ignore the specific vulnerabilities of children. Thus, policies to promote support for families, better data collection of family vulnerability and circumstances, ensuring that all countries have children at the top of their mind when organizing humanitarian response, and ensuring the effective participation of children and adolescents in all decisions affecting them are essential ways to respond to climate change effects in families and children. But as important as addressing the effect of climate change is to prevent them. And that's what we do in a project run in Manaus by SOS Brazil. Just a couple of words on it. I don't know if you know, Manaus is the capital of the biggest state in Brazil, that is Amazonas. Amazonas is the main state of the Amazonas forest. So we have a lot of indigenous...
I'm sorry, Mrs. Brooke, we are running out of time.
Oh, okay.
We have one more minute.
Okay. So we have this project around that we work with indigenous and 100 families in Manaus that deal with the forest and all the drone that we have in the Amazon River. That's it. I mean, if you want, I'll be happy to share further information for anybody interested in this other family. We have a very interesting project there, so I could give more information about it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So, Mr. Jushan Wang, Director of China Great Wall Society, you have the floor.
Okay. Your Excellencies, dear colleagues, thanks for the organizer sincerely, and we have the opportunity to be here to share our opinion about the family issues. We all know that the family is a nature and a fundamental building block of a society. Family and society play integral roles in shaping individuals and communities. They provide a sense of belonging, support, guidance, and contribute significantly to social and personal growth. As such, stable families are essential for stable communities, stable nations, and a stable world. This is evidenced in myriad studies and statistics. However, we are facing many problems with the family issues worldwide now, with the development of a social economy. In some countries, the divorce rate is more and more higher than before, and on the other hand, the more and more young persons will not like have children. I don't think that it means we are all more freedom with human rights. It reflects or indicates some social problem. We should think about deeply the reason background it. What can be done to further strengthen the family role to society? I think we should emphasize the value of the family in society. Family and society are intertwined entities that significantly influence the individual well-being and shape the track of society. Nelson Mandela said that education is the strongest power. You can change the world with it. So I also like to emphasize that education. Article 26 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights outlines parents' right to actively participate in their children's education. Not only is it in the family that children learn academic skills, but they also learn other important life skills such as financial literacy, health practices, etc. Frankly, everything we do is for the realization of the better life. Maybe we cannot change this world, but we can push it towards better direction. Everyone was born in this world has a specific mission. Realizing a better life is common aspiration and a mission of humanity. In the era of underdeveloped industrial civilization, when there are many problems that humans cannot solve, we are suffering from difficulties difficulties and hardships, we hope for a superpower to solve problems and help us transcend. Therefore, we have various beliefs which help us achieve a better life. That is a kind of civilization. The power of civilization is tangible and influences the way we solve problems. I think now we need a kind of family civilization. Carl Theodor Jaspers from Germany once said, "The best education is that one tree shakes another tree, one cloud pushes another cloud, one soul awakens another soul." I hope that we can work together to wake up the society, to make the family relationships will be more stable. 2 days later, it will be the Chinese Lunar New Year. It's the biggest family festival and most important festival for all Chinese people. It was listed as a UN holiday also and emphasized the family reunion. I'd like to take this opportunity to send my best wishes to all of you with a happy family and a happy life. And there will be a performance from China just the evening
I'm
of
sorry,
tomorrow.
Mr. Wang,
Okay.
we're running out of time.
Yeah, welcome and thank you all.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Mrs. Ana Maria Pesantes, President of DNA Foundation.
Good afternoon. I'm Ana Maria Pesantes, and I have the honor of working as president of DNA Foundation in Ecuador. In our organization, we are committed to the design, identification, and implementation of social and economic impact projects that seek to offer comprehensive solutions for Ecuadorian families. Our approach is oriented towards to develop of the Sustainable Development Goals, such as the reduction of the inequality, access to employment, especially for young people and women, environmental protection, and water management, among others. All our efforts are materialized through public-private partnership, promoted dialogue, and social responsibility. We firmly believe in the importance of working together to achieve a positive and sustainable impact in our society. It is with great satisfaction that we share that although our organization has only 1 year of operation, we have already benefited more than 100,000 people. I'm really proud of our teamwork. For this year, our goal is to exceed 200,000 people is in different areas of work and expand our contribution to more territories in Ecuador. We deeply appreciate the opportunity to share our mission and vision with all of you. We sincerely hope to join the value work that you are already doing and continue to build solid alliances to drive meaningful and lasting change. Thank you, professors. You are amazing. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for all.
Thank you very much, Ana Maria Pesantes. Now we would have like the speech of Sara Hernandez, the Montreal Presidente Estatal GIF of Zacatecas in Mexico. But due to technical issues, she wouldn't be able to stay here. So we will play the video they have prepared at the end of the event. But we will listen to their short intervention of 2 minutes, right? Is that right? Okay, now? Later. Now. Okay, you have the floor.
Con afecto a todas y a todos. Soy Sara Hernández Campa, presidenta honorífica del Sistema Estatal para el Desarrollo Integral de la Familia del Estado de Zacatecas, México. Es un placer poder compartirles las diferentes acciones, estrategias, proyectos y programas que conforman la política pública que tiene el objetivo de posicionar a la familia como eje rector de nuestra sociedad, basados en una estructura práctica de valores como el respeto, la empatía, la responsabilidad, la justicia, la identidad cívica y la solidaridad, para mejorar nuestro tejido social y la calidad de vida de las familias. Nuestros programas están alineados a los objetivos del milenio y orientados a reducir brechas manifestadas en vulnerabilidades, a la protección de niñas y niños y adolescentes y, por lo tanto, a la familia, así como el fortalecimiento institucional para llegar a todos los rincones de la entidad, siguiendo la línea de focalización de acciones concretas destinadas a los grupos de atención prioritaria. Ayudamos y orientamos a las ciudadanas a formar comunidad y familia para construir una sociedad sólida en sus valores y en su calidad de vida. Por ello, en noviembre del 2023 suscribimos la Declaración de Venecia. La importancia que tiene la salud mental a nivel individual y mundial, comunitario y social es fundamental para refuncionalizar la dinámica de la sociedad. Los estragos de la pandemia COVID-19 afectaron las relaciones humanas y en todas las dimensiones hemos establecido espacios de convivencia y esparcimientos como la celebración del Día de la Familia, el Festival de Día de Muertos, el Festival de Luces de Navidad, así como la celebración de cenas navideñas, espacios donde participaron las familias en su conjunto, es decir, se reunieron con distintas generaciones con el fin de fortalecer la cultura, las tradiciones, la cohesión y el tejido social, potenciando la identidad y pertenencia que nos caracteriza como un pueblo único en el mundo, promoviendo la paz social, derechos humanos y el cuidado y procuración de la familia. Nuestro Estado ha declarado el 2024 como el Año de la Paz, coincidiendo con la conmemoración del Año Internacional de la Familia. Refrendamos nuestro compromiso de trabajo en políticas y programas orientadas a esta. Agradezco enormemente este espacio para intercambiar experiencias, buenas prácticas, para decirles que en Zacatecas las familias trabajamos por un mundo mejor para ellas y sus futuras generaciones. Paz, bienestar y progreso. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Okay, we appreciate all these insightful contributions, and now let's move on to the award ceremony. We have reached the most awaited part of the event, the IFFD award ceremony. Now, I'll give the floor to Mrs. Nora Urrea, World Vice President of the International Federation for Family Development, to introduce the first award. So, Mrs. Urrea, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It is my honor to present this award to Mr. Park. He's here to represent the Blue Tree Foundation, which was established in 1995 by Kim Jong-ki after the tragic loss of his son to school violence. This foundation is a South Korean non-governmental organization dedicated to youth violence prevention. Recognizing school violence as a systemic social issue rather than an isolated incident, the foundation provides support not only to victims, but to perpetrators. With a focus of counseling, education, campaigns, global initiatives, research, and scholarship training, the foundation addresses various aspects of violence prevention. One notable initiative is the Blue Elephant Cyber Violence Prevention Platform, developed in collaboration with the South Korean government and Samsung, aimed at education, research, advocacy, and legislative reforms to combat cyberbullying. The Foundation's consultative status with the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Committee since 2009 underscores its global recognition and impact. As part of our commitment to supporting families, the International Federation for Family Development has awarded the Blue Tree Foundation the 2024 IFFD Award for its efforts in promoting youth well-being, preventing school violence, and advocating for marginalized youth rights. Congratulations, Mr. Park.
Congratulations, Mr. Park. You have the floor for the acceptance remarks.
Moving and touching, fascinating, also very honorable. Let me briefly say a few words for acceptance and appreciation. Vice President Nora Nuera and distinguished and delegate and members of IFFD, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Blue Tree Foundation, I, as a chairman, am very glad to accept IFFD awards and honored to deliver a few words as an acceptance remarks. Prestigious IFFD awards brings distinction to our performance and gives a resounding endorsement of our effort for the youth, family, and society over the past 29 years. It is with much gratefulness and aspiration that I humbly accept this distinction. As Nora mentioned, the Blue Tree Foundation is founded in 1995. We always stand with the youth and empower youth to create a better world beyond overcoming and preventing school issues, including bullying and cyberbullying. We are now working to diffuse a culture of nonviolence in all directions and in all arenas. As we all recognize and firmly believe, education can create a better society, without doubt. And we know that family should be at the center of the change. That is why we keep on focusing on education, counseling, culture, research, and family, and resulting in a sustainable society. It is my understanding that sustainability is the promise between present and future based on the dialogue between past and present. Therefore, sustainability must contain the vivid memory of yesterday, the critical reflection on today, and the achievable dream for tomorrow. We, the Blue Tree Foundation, always keep in mind the notion of sustainability and as a standard of our work and as a basis for expanding our programs. This year marks the 30th anniversary of the International Year of the Family by the United Nations. The Blue Tree Foundation will also celebrate 30th anniversary next year. As a result, we are planning to hold a well-designed international conference in Seoul to discuss in depth about family, school, education, youth, new technology, and the future. I hope to be able to invite many of you here to the next year conference in Seoul and ask you for your continued interest and support. In closing the acceptance remark, I would like to mention our foundation's motto, which is the Blue Tree always be with the youth. We'll continue to strive for the vision of standing with the youth and empowering youth as a pillar of sustainable future. Now, once again, I would like to express my deep gratitude to all of you for celebrating this award with me. I also sincerely wish the IFFD much success ahead in promoting a family perspective worldwide. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations one more time, Mr. Park. Now, I would like to refer to the next awardee, the government of France. Due to comprehensive and structural changes in the French government, we have to postpone their award presentation until further notice. In turn, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Renata Kaczmarska focal point on the family, UN Dessa, for closing remarks. So, Ms. Kaczmarska, you have the floor.
Thank you, Leticia. Thank you all for gathering here today. It was a really remarkable day today, starting with the family panel at the Commission for Social Development. And the experts gathered here already covered a lot of interlinkages between the megatrends that we presented and climate change. So this is our beginning, really, to explore the climate change and its impact on families in more detail. And this year, the whole year will be devoted to that topic. And I profited from this event actually to see some interlinkages already and some issues that we should put into bigger scrutiny. So, for example, you mentioned education, you mentioned awareness raising, you mentioned the politicizing of the issue. You highlighted voting with your wallet, right? Then Family Stability Institute, and I would like to talk to you after, mentioned sustainable agricultural practices and family farming. And I hope to explore all these issues at the International Day of Families that will have 15th of May. You're all invited to that day, where I promise you to focus on these issues and other, and maybe we can find the answers to some of the questions that were asked here, and really focus on all these aspects of how families can contribute to fighting climate change and what we can do, how we can vote with our wallets, how we can raise awareness, how we can make sure that the climate change education is part of the curricula of schools around the world. These are all very important issues that families have to raise also with their educational institutions, with their governments. We heard a lot about the movement in the 70s, and we need maybe similar movement, and there is some movement actually led by young people already on that. So we have to inspire more action on this. And I really hope that this event and our conversations and our recommendations will help with putting the family-oriented policies in all these actions to really contribute to the sustainable development. And I encourage you to look at our website, where we have all the resources that we created for this anniversary. We have the megatrends papers, we have recommendations, we have resolutions, we have reports of the Secretary General. So I just hope that you bring this message that we have from all these resources to your communities, to your governments, your local governments, so that we can really make a difference and really make sure that family perspective is taken into account in the sustainable development efforts. So thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you. And before we leave, first of all, I'd like to ask everyone to stay here for a picture. And second, we want to remind you about the Civil Society Declaration for the 30th anniversary of the International Year of the Family. So you can find each on our website with the QR code projected in the documents in front of you. And any questions you can ask us. Thank you so much for your presence. Thank you, everyone.